Hello friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. The video that I am going to be doing today is my spoiler chat for the Path of Daggers, book 8 in the Wheel of Time. And these videos are always crazy long because I always have a ton to say, but I'm pretty sure that this is the shortest book in the series aside from New Spring. And I still have like a decent amount to say, but I'm gonna try and keep this reasonable. I say that every time, but you'll know by the timestamp on this video when you click on it how I did. So first of all, I buddy read this with Angela from Literature Science Alliance and Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads, and that was a really cool experience because we all have different perspectives and all of us notice different things, so I really loved listening to their messages and getting their thoughts kind of as we were all going through the chapters together. And there are some things that they feel similar to me about and some things that they don't, which honestly is one of the best things about reading a series like this. There's so much going on and there is just so much to talk about. So first of all, I gave this book 3 stars. This is the first book where I have felt like it was the slog, and basically what my 3-star rating comes down to is I still liked it, but the beginning and the ending of this book were good for me, whereas the middle felt like it dragged more for me and I didn't enjoy it as much. But at least it was kind of that sandwich where I liked the things on both ends that did help me along a little bit. Then the other thing to get out of the way right away is that there's no Matt in this book, and we do get a couple of throwaway lines about how he was basically left in Ibu Dar when they were looking for Oliver, and Rand says that he would know if Matt was dead. He knows Matt's not dead, which I guess I can suspend my disbelief. I can excuse that and basically just say like, oh, maybe Rand would know because they can feel each other, I guess, through being Taviran. But I was a little bit disappointed that there was no Matt because I like Matt. But yeah, he doesn't have the storyline in this one, so hoping that he makes a return in the next book. So I want to start off with the storyline concerning Ibu Dar because we have Elaine, Nynaeve, Aviendha, and Birgitte who have they left Ibu Dar and they are finally going to be able to use the Bowl of the Winds, and all of those characters are in that same story thread together. So that is their main task at the start of this book. We get to see how there are some maybe less than great, like there are some suspicious things going on in the palace in Ibu Dar because you have the golem, or at least I think it's the golem that's watching them, and then you also have Moradin watching them, and I'm still not entirely sure who that is, but basically that's not great. But they do escape, and when Aviendha does her very interesting thing with untying the weave for the gateway, you can see that that is frustrating to the people that were watching them because that's not supposed to happen. There is supposed to be a residue left from a weave, so that was really interesting. But they kind of ruin it, or they don't ruin it, but when they use the Bowl of the Winds, that much of the power being used in one place does very much just like immediately give away where they are. But I was very relieved that they finally got to use the bowl. But then as we see throughout the rest of this book, there was definitely something very weird going on with the power when they did use the bowl, because you can see through the descriptions of when they're linked in that circle, Saidin, none of them can see it since they are all obviously wielding Saladar. I hope I'm getting that right, geez. But they can't see it because it's the male half, but they can tell that Saidin is there and it's acting weird. And then we see throughout the rest of the book that in that entire region of, like, that entire geographical region, the power is acting weird. So I really want to know what's up with that. And then in the early going there, I feel like the tension was kept up between all of the factions. Like, you've got the Isody, you've got the Sea Folk, and you've got the Knitting Circle. So I find it a little bit hard to keep up with sometimes, maybe, how the hierarchies work within each of those groups, but they all seem to like to bicker with each other. So that's just kind of something that is consistent throughout the series, I find, is when you have a group of women together, Robert Jordan does do that, which I'm not always opposed to it. Like, I get why people in each of these factions wouldn't trust each other, but there's also a lot of bickering within each of them. And I just think, like, is there not a single power structure society here that actually runs smoothly the way that it's supposed to, with women getting along in their roles and doing what they're supposed to do? Does he have that? I don't know. But what happens next with them I found more exciting, because obviously you have them making a gateway to escape, or well, not to escape yet. They're planning on traveling. And then while they are exiting closer to Camelin, the Seanchan attack, and so Elaine, Avienda, and Brigitte stay behind to try and defend this gateway, because Elaine was trying to pick it apart like Avienda had done with hers. But the thing is, if you get it wrong, you never know what the outcome will be. So I find that very well done, because that raises the stakes a little bit. The fact that they got far enough away from the gateway with Elaine holding on to a part of her weave before she let it go, and the entire thing exploded and basically just took out all of the Seanchan. First of all, that's terrifying, because when we got to see back in the camp where they came from the perspective of one of the Seanchan flyers, it's basically described as everything just being gone. That area is leveled entirely. And obviously the same thing happened on Elaine, Avienda, and Brigitte's side, but they were far enough away. They still got injured, but they didn't get incinerated. But then when Avienda says that there's always a chance that nothing happens and it doesn't explode, I feel like we're gonna have to circle back around to that, because they would have been so screwed if nothing happened and the Seanchan were still able to just come through that gateway. Another thing that I like while we were watching this unfold is that I think the Seanchan are great antagonists, and I like that we are being shown a few sprinkles here and there from their perspectives, because I like to see that they basically view themselves as the rightful owners of this land. That adds a wrinkle to things that is a lot more interesting. They're not just invading for the sake of it. They believe that they are returning, and they're the descendants of Arthur Hawkwing, so they think that this land belongs to them and that they're taking it back. So I like that. And then in terms of the rest of their storyline with the women on their way to Camelin, a few things that I just want to mention are, I like Nynaeve and Lan's relationship in this one. I enjoy watching development between them, even if it's off page, just with people referencing them. The fact that sometimes they have to sleep apart and they don't really like that. I don't know. I like Lan and Nynaeve, and I also feel like you can see Nynaeve going through some character development, because she seems to apologize more. She seems to not always assert her will. She's working better with other people. I really feel like we're seeing some growth from her, which I'm very happy about. I also love the friendship between Elaine, Brigitte, and Avienda, and there's different dynamics between each of the three of them, but I really like how close they've become and how supportive they are of one another, so I really enjoy that. And then kind of the culmination of this story thread is, I'm very happy that Elaine has the lion thrown back again in Camelin, but I'm also very suspicious about who the dark friend is in their camp, or Forsaken, or whoever it could be, really, because it could be somebody taking the shape of someone else. Obviously there is something suspicious going on there, and we don't know who it is, so gotta keep an eye on that. The next storyline that I will talk about is Perrin and Morghese, and of course they don't start this book together, but they do meet each other. So before we got the sense that something had been planned between Rand and Perrin, even though we didn't know exactly what it was, and obviously Rand, like, kicking Perrin out of Cairhien was an act, but it had been kept from us what the actual purpose of that was. And so in this book we find out that Perrin has been sent to Massima, or to the Prophet, to try and rein him in, because what he is doing is pretty screwed up, and there are a lot of essentially bandits roaming the land, acting and committing violence, supposedly in the name of the Dragon Reborn, but really the prophet is not, like, he has taken everything to the next level and he is fully like a religious zealot. And so, of course, Perrin with his camp unknowingly encounters Morghese and Lini and everyone that they're with, their little group. And I just have to say, I love that trope. It's always been something that I've loved, when two characters meet each other through whatever circumstances have brought them into contact, and the audience knows both of the characters, so the audience knows that this is a significant meeting, but the characters don't know. And so I don't know what it is about that trope. It's just something that I've always loved, because I love to watch things slowly unfold, and then I love to watch the moment of realization when those characters realize who each other are. And so in this case, of course, we have Morghese eventually realizing that Perrin is important, but Perrin still at this point doesn't know who Morghese is. So I'm still looking forward to that moment of realization when somebody realizes that this is Morghese, Elaine's mother, because you get moments where Perrin is like, huh, that's weird, she almost reminds me of Elaine. And so, I don't know, I really do just love that trope, so this is something that I thought was fun in their storyline. But then as we continue on in that storyline, of course, we have Perrin and Faile gaining the allegiance of Alejandra. She is going to declare for the Dragon Reborn, but really she ends up swearing fealty to Perrin, which is something unexpected and can probably be put down to him being ta'veren, but also Perrin just kind of has an honest way about him that kind of draws people in and makes them like him, which is understandable. And then the other thing is that Elias makes a reappearance, which I thought was really cool. I didn't miss him that much, but I thought he was cool in the first book, and I think it's cool that he's back. And then, of course, you have Perrin actually going to see the prophet, going to see Masema, meeting with him, and he thinks that it's going well. But we see then on the outside of the city that Faile, Alejandra, and I believe Morghese as well are actually taken captive by the Shaido Aiel, and they need to get somebody to Perrin to warn him that Masema has been basically fraternizing with the Shan-Chan, which is bad. So that was a very pessimistic ending, I will say, for that storyline, because we don't know if anybody got to Perrin to warn him about that. Most of the women have been kidnapped and we don't know what's going to happen to them. So I'm glad that there was a little bit of excitement to wrap up this storyline. This kind of applies to what I was saying about liking the end of the book better than the middle, because it was getting a little bit tedious to me to be in Perrin's head when he was just like fawning over Faile and worrying about what she'll think of him, and he can't disappoint her. He, like, Faile's the only thing that matters to him. Like, I understand why he feels that way about his wife, but that's not exactly what I'm reading the epic fantasy story for. I get a little tired of that. I can't help it. Okay, so next up we have the storyline with Gwen and Swan and the Saladar Aes Sedai, which is an interesting one in the sense that quite a few things happen that are significant, but at the same time, not that much happens. Basically, the gist of it is that Egwene and Swan have finessed their way into more power because they were very carefully maneuvering so that they could essentially get, I believe it's the law of war. I can't remember what the exact name of it is, but they've basically enacted this thing where if they declare war on Elida and the Tower, Egwene actually has power as the Emerald Seat. Like, the Hall of the Tower has to listen to her on things pertaining to the war. So she's essentially forced their hand into actually giving her power as the Emerald Seat, which I found really interesting and I really liked. And so one thing that I don't always like about Robert Jordan's writing is that he will ask you to keep a lot of balls in the air. Like, he will ask you to kind of remember storylines that haven't been resolved yet that you don't have all the information for. But with this one, earlier on in the book, we didn't know what Egwene and Swan were up to. That information was being kept from us. So in that sense, it was like one of those balls that you had to keep in the air. But then this was actually resolved in a relatively short period of time. What they were up to was revealed a couple chapters later, and we got the vindication of Egwene getting her power from the Hall of the Tower, from the Sitters of the Hall. I called it the Hall of the Tower, but they're not really the Tower Aes Sedai. I'm trying to delineate between them. But because this was resolved quickly, I liked it. So I don't mind if Jordan is keeping things from me, as long as I don't have to remember them for books and books and books, because inevitably I will forget them. So the other two important things to note with this Saladar Aes Sedai camp is we definitely have a Forsaken, or if not a Forsaken, a really powerful dark friend running around this camp. I think that it's Halima, because I believe hints were dropped in either Crown of Swords or Lord of Chaos that she is very suspicious and we don't trust her. But I'm not 100% sure, because like I said, if I'm asked to put a pin in something and I don't have all the information, I will forget whether I was told or not. But whoever this is has murdered 2 maids of Egwene's. At least I'm pretty sure that that's their fate. People think that they ran off, but we get to see this dark friend walking around with like dead bodies in their arms. So they've definitely murdered somebody, and I think that it's Egwene's maids. And we also have Halima helping her with her headaches. So I find that very suspicious. I think she is someone. I don't know who she is, because I am terrible at keeping up with the Forsaken, but she is definitely someone that we do not trust. And then finally, at the end of this book, we see Egwene and her faction of the Aes Sedai preparing to travel to Tar Valon to siege the White Tower, which is obviously huge, but that's all we see. So that is the end for that one, and I hope that we will continue with that immediately in Winter's Heart. I know people say that Winter's Heart is also very slow, so I don't know how much we will get of that in Winter's Heart, because in my mind, a siege of Tar Valon would be exciting, unless they just get there and they're at a stalemate. But regardless, that's where we leave them. And then finally we have Rand's storyline in this book, which is basically starting off with the fact that he is trying to unite Illian under himself, because he has just taken the crown at the very end of the 7th book. And the important part of the start of this book is that he generally doesn't trust a lot of the people around him. He ends up actually gathering a bunch of nobles that he does not trust so that he can keep them under his eye, along with like a couple that he does trust. Davrim Bashir is chief among those that he does trust. And with this entire collection of like Illianers, Kyrianen, and Tyrans, none of them trust each other either. So he's kind of forcing them all to keep an eye on each other, which is clever, but he takes them to fight skirmishes and battles in the mountains of Altara and Illian against the Shan-Chan. And so I kind of get it. He's taking the people that he doesn't trust so that if they get killed, I don't know if they get killed he doesn't care. Like, I guess it's basically he doesn't want to take his most important forces, aside from Davrim Bashir, because he trusts him to actually help execute these battles and things like that. And so the important thing here is that Rand is also struggling with this sort of sickness with the power every time he tries to seize Saidin. And he also isn't sure which of the Ashaman he can trust either. Personally, I didn't really trust any of them that far, but we definitely see some paranoia inside Rand's head that's being fed by Lews Therin, and he's not really trusting anyone at the moment. And then this kind of comes to a head because Rand has actually had Narishma go and retrieve Kalendor from Tyr. And Rand tries to use Calendor during these battles with the Shan-Chan, but he completely loses control, and whether this is because of this sickness that he's going through, whether that is because of the use of the Bowl of the Winds and the fact that the power is acting really weird in this area, there are a lot of things that it could be, and maybe it's a combination of them, but Rand completely loses control and he basically ravages both armies. He so thoroughly attacks both armies, his own and the Shan-Chan, that both armies think that they lost, which I thought was pretty funny. Like, it's not funny, it's ironic type of funny, because you see the devastation after Rand uses Calendor like within his own armies, and it's definitely devastating and it's sad, and he realizes that he is responsible for some more deaths on his own side, and obviously that's sad and he hates it. But then you cut to the perspective of the Shan-Chan and you realize that they're retreating as well. It's just very ironic, that type of dramatic irony where the audience knows that both of these things are going on at the same time. So then finally, Rand returns to Cairhien and he returns to Min, and he is getting stressed out about the fact that Elaine has the Lion Throne but has taken his banners down and things. So he's stressed about going to see her, and Min is trying to convince him that it's fine. And then after they've had this conversation, some of the Aes Sedai from the tower that were originally responsible for kidnapping Rand come and swear fealty to him. And one thing that I liked about this is that it's very clear that all of the Aes Sedai have different personalities. They give Rand different reasons for why they're there, why they're gonna swear fealty, and I liked that. And then, of course, right after that, Rand and Min go to visit Swan because he hears that she is in the palace, and because of the fact they have left Rand's rooms right at that moment, they escape a massive explosion that was obviously supposed to occur when they were in those rooms, and Rand finds out that there are Ashaman in the palace trying to kill him that are led by Dashiva. And then there are two other names that I don't remember, but those two were with Dashiva, and they are kind of mentioned throughout this book, and it's mentioned that Rand doesn't trust them. They seem like they're kind of suspicious and they don't really respect him. So I could kind of see that coming, but I didn't know that it would be Dashiva. I just didn't really trust any of the Ashaman, to be quite honest with you. So there are some pretty explosive events, no pun intended, happening at the end of this book. I did enjoy the end of this book. It was the middle where it really struggled for me, and even the beginning, I liked that as well. So just the fact that a lot of really great things have been set up here gives me hope for Winter's Heart, but then at the same time, I know that Winter's Heart is still part of the slog, so we'll see how I feel about it. I haven't hated anything so far. I still gave this 3 stars, and the fact that it was short didn't hurt, so I am looking forward to Winter's Heart still, and I'm gonna read that in January. So inevitably, I have been talking for a long time. We all knew that it was gonna happen, let's be honest. Thank you so much for watching if you made it to the end of this video. I really hope you liked it. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content from me, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!